yeah, like even like on my jump skis, I would go run the slalom course, and like slalom, like every day I'd have at least 10 minutes of a set, or at least a whole set, like 15 minutes, where I'd just go out and kind of muck about, go the wrong foot forward slalom, just silly things. Like I'd always just go out for the last set and have fun, or at least the cable for like an hour. But yeah, every day. I just didn't want to get on the train.
Hello, and welcome back, or welcome to the Water Ski Podcast. This is Matteo Luzzeri, your host, and the goal of this podcast is to grow and promote the sport of water skiing, primarily through the voice of people in the sport: skiers, drivers, judges, tournament organizers, amateurs, pros, whatever, and whoever wants to talk to me about water skiing. What a pleasure this was. This is the first part of an interview with Joe Poland. Joe Poland is the current world overall champion, and it's not exceeding in saying that he's a sensation in the sport of water skiing. Extremely talented, both on the water and off the water, as a personality of the sport, and the way in which he represents himself, the brands that support him, and overall the sport in general. This is a young skier who nevertheless has shown extreme levels of performance in all three disciplines, to the point that he could compete at pro tournaments and shoot for podiums in all three of them. And he has done podiums this year, and we certainly talk about that more a little in part 2 of this interview. But in the first part, we take our time to explore the younger days and his upbringing into the sport, which is a peculiar one, I would say, and also a story we might have heard from other skiers. So family, dedication, and in him, the fun aspect of water skiing was pretty much prevalent from the start, which was a pleasure to hear about. So yeah, this is the first part of my interview with Joel. I hope you enjoyed, and I want you to know that we are back with some advertisement. Please check out the advertisers. They really help the podcast to continue and to grow. So I'll read a couple of ads now, and then we'll jump into the first part of my interview with Joe Poland. This episode is brought to you by Real Frequency College Consulting, a returning sponsor of the Water Ski Podcast. If you're a collegiate-bound student or a parent of one, this is an exciting and stressful time. It's common to become overwhelmed with the admission process, college research, deadlines, essays, and picking the perfect college ski club culture, if that is something you want to do. And we highly encourage it because, let's face it, they are all pretty awesome. Are you and your student making the best decisions based on your strengths to increase success and mitigate risk? Real Frequency College Consulting is with you every step of the way. Real Frequency offers strengths and purpose-driven narrative for the edge you'll need to get through your hardest life path yet. Comprehensive college reports on over 6,400 institutions and extensive info on NCWSA affiliated schools, so the ski schools. Financial plannings from a college economics specialist, access to your very own admission essay specialist, and so much more. This process can feel like running your hardest pass, but it does not have to. Let Real Frequency take on the stress of admissions so you can enjoy the course and learn so much more about yourself in the process. So to check them out, go on realfrequency.com, that's REAL frequency.com, or you can text RFTWSP to 509-759-2317 to schedule your free consultation. Real Frequency, The stress isn't worth it, but a college consultant is. So you can mention TWSP or Matteo is the man, and you can receive 6% off, like the 6 buoys of the course, for your 9 or 12 months benefit. So again, realfrequency.com. This episode of the Waterski podcast is brought to you also by the Flowpoint Method. The Flowpoint Method is the online waterski training program developed by Jenny LeBeau and Marcus Brown, one of the guests of this show. Jenny and Marcus leverage on years of experience and competencies to give you a truly holistic approach to waterskiing, covering technique, fitness, nutrition, and mindset. For the Northern Hemisphere folks, the first week of off-season started yesterday, so this means hitting the gym and working hard to prepare for a great 2022 season. Speaking of gym, what I truly love about the program is the extensive library of instructional videos showing proper technique and execution, which I believe is so crucial when it comes to heavy weights or very technical workouts. From amateur skiers to seasoned pro, the Flowpoint Method provides structure and guidance for anyone who is truly committed to take their skiing to the next level. So you can become a member of the Flowpoint Method or take advantage of the 14 days trial that they have going on by going to thewaterskipodcast.com/flowpointmethod, one word, or you can click in the link in the show notes. All right, so without any further ado, let's enjoy this first part of my interview with Joel Poland. Joel, welcome to the Waterski podcast, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I've been wanting to do this interview for a long time, and if I may say, like, one of the reasons why I host this podcast is that I really want to talk to people and get to know people, and I honestly don't know your story that much. So as you probably know, I'm going to start with the usual Waterski podcast question, which is, how'd you get into water skiing?
Oh, it's not too long a story, really. I started skiing with my dad. Well, my dad was a barefooter, and he used to get me up on his skis when I was pretty young. I must have been around 2 or 3. But I was never really into skiing that much. I didn't want to do it by myself. I kind of like just hanging out with my dad on the boat and skiing with him. And one day he convinced me to go out on the surfboard behind the boat. And we were going I didn't want to do it. He convinced me to do it. And I was probably only going about a mile an hour. I was like, okay, we can maybe go a little faster. So I'm giving him the thumbs up. And then by the end of it, we're going for 6 or 7 year old me, it felt pretty quick.
Right.
And then after that, I was like, I want to ski. I want to wakeboard. I got super into it. I took a little gap at one point. I watched the movie Jaws, and I was like maybe 8, which is like, I don't know what my parents were thinking, but I watched the movie Jaws. That put me off skiing for about a year, got back into it. And then I think it was in Extreme Gene in Spain. I was a wakeboarder. I didn't want anything to do with skiing. And they were like, hey, come out on the boat one day. Come ski with us.
Right.
So I went out skiing. And it was like the first time I'd ever seen a slalom course. First time I'd ever tried one. And like in 2 days, I was running the slalom course. I was like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. And I didn't touch a wakeboard again for years.
No way.
Skiing since.
Extreme Gene, I've only been once, but I think they do both wakeboarding and water skiing, right?
Yeah. So I went there as a wakeboarder. I'd hang out with the wakeboarders all day. My dad would go with the skiers all day. And so we didn't see that much of each other because you're in different boats. And then he was like, yeah, come hang out with us for a day. And I did. I'm glad I did.
Right. Yeah, it turned out pretty good for you.
Yeah,
but how old were you around this time?
I must have been around 10 or 11.
Okay.
I was pretty young.
So I guess one of the questions I have is what attracted you to wakeboarding? Like, why wakeboarding in the first years?
Well, I had a lot of energy as a kid. Like, I got pretty good ADHD, so I'd never sit still. And like behind the boat, one set is 10, 15 minutes, and you can only do, well, I used to do a lot a day, but you can only do so many. Whereas on a wakeboard, there was a cable, and that was just hours. So I'd just go around on that thing literally all day for hours on repeat. And that was kind of the thing that I was really into, and I wanted to do backflips. I didn't know what trick skiing was at that point. Just
Hmm.
wanted to go do backflips, hit the
Yeah,
kickers,
well,
do a backflip.
right.
That's what I was into.
So where were you riding on a cable? Was this in like back home or?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that knew Prince's Water Ski Club, that was one hell of a place. We had 2 cable lakes, and I think there was 3 ski lakes
Yeah.
and a wakeboard lake. And that's where I got started off. I started on the cable there, wakeboarding. Um, Before that, there was a club called Spelthorne, which was a barefooters club. And then when my dad started skiing, he wanted to find somewhere to ski, so we went to Prince's. And yeah, I spent a few years there.
But so hold on, you said that when you were really, really little, your dad was a barefooter, but he had skis in the boat. So
Yeah.
sounds like your dad also did from wakeboarding to slalom skiing, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, he was a barefooter. He was always into barefooting. That's what he did when he was maybe a little older than me. He would have been around like late 20s, early 30s, and he barefooted for years. Um, and then he's part of a barefooters club, had a boat, and he was getting too old for barefooting and keeping up with me because barefooting
All
crashes
right.
hurt quite a lot. So he started
Yeah.
slalom skiing because of me, really, to try keep up, and I couldn't barefoot. I was too young. I probably could have actually, looking at kids these days, but
Right.
yeah.
So
So he wanted to get
that's
into skiing more
interesting.
for me.
And then so you was barefooting, you sort of tried, but then you got into wakeboarding, and then he got into skiing, and then eventually around age 10 or 11, you sort of merged
Yeah,
into the skiing.
yeah.
Nice. And so was it like, did you guys ski together a lot after that? Like, were you just slaloming together?
Oh yeah, that became our thing. I mean, even still, when I come home, I ski with my dad. He's my skiing partner, really. Um, when he started skiing, he had a bit of experience, so he was starting to get into short line as I started skiing, or he started cutting the rope,
Yeah.
and it was always competition. I was always trying to catch up with him, and he's a pretty good 14-meter skier.
Yep.
Just as I was sort of turning about 12, and that's kind of where I was about. So it was like a race who could run 14 first.
Yep.
And yeah, so that was my driver, I think, trying to beat my dad.
Right. I think, I mean, personal experience, I had the same, right? And then you
Yeah,
find eventually a moment where you just pass that, and
yeah.
that can catch up anymore. But I guess what what were those years like? Were you guys going to tournaments together? Like, were you really living the sport with dad?
In the beginning, we would just go to Prince's on a weekend. I would actually get a taxi straight from school and kind of hang out there for an hour or two till he was done work, and then he would come and would go ski. I
Yep.
still wakeboarded a bit, so I'd go on the cable and wakeboarded. I used to slalom on the cable as well, just because why not?
Right.
And yeah, we spent a lot of time in the beginning, just me and him on the lake skiing, having fun. And then we went to a tournament. I think it was at Prince's, and we got introduced to like 3 event for the first time. I saw all the kids tricking and jumping. It's like that's what I want to do. So he went and got me a trick ski. He went and got me some jump skis, or there was some in the shed. Like I think they were like 90 inches. And I was like 12.
Okay.
They
That's a
were
little long
massive.
to start. Right.
And I started doing 3 event. We started going to tournaments, and one thing led to another. We went to pretty much every tournament in England. Started going to Europeans. I don't think he's missed a single Europeans or Worlds I've ever gone to.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah, it's
cool.
pretty cool.
That's cool. So, but that's really interesting, like sort of like introduction to skiing, you know? 'Cause like, so dad clearly into towed water sports,
Yeah,
you somewhat, you know, and then into wakeboard, then into slalom, and then you get exposed to overall. Okay, I want to do that.
yeah.
Um, now, what I guess like was it immediately competition for you? Because it was competition with dad, right?
Yeah.
But when you started going to the tournaments, right, was this the thing that fueled wanting to ski more?
I was always competitive, but it was more like against myself, I guess.
Hmm.
Like my dad used to drive me with things like if you can go around on the cable for like 50 laps in a row without letting go, then on the way home we can stop at the gas station and you can have this.
Right.
And he was kind of like fueling me with like reward by doing things.
Yep.
And that actually still carries on now.
Okay.
in a way.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like in the beginning, it wasn't really competitive. It wasn't until I actually started skiing with John Battleday. He taught me how to be competitive. He built that into me.
Right. Right. Um, Before we go into you starting to ski with John, I love how you said, like you would get a cab, get to Princess, hang out for a couple of hours before Dad would show up after work.
Yeah.
Um, Give a sense for the listeners that haven't had a chance to go to Princess, to just give a description of that place, because it was a truly unique place.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, they had a bar on site. They had like Xboxes for the kids to use. They had like a little restaurant in there. They had sort of play areas for all the kids. They have the cables. There's loads of people always around, and like it was quite a good community actually in the beginning. It sort of fell off towards the end, but when I was there, it was a really good community. Everyone knew each other. You know, I had a coach, Duncan, who he took
Yep.
great care of me for years, and like I would show up to the lake and just whoever was there would be like, "Oh, Joel's here," and it was just normal that a 10-year-old, 11-year-old was there without his dad. Is that
Right.
that comfortable of a place, that safe?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a really amazing place. It's a real shame that place got shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to see it, I think, the year before it closed, or 2 years before it
Yeah,
closed. No, and I like the feeling was like, say I went there to ski Princess Pro-Am with my family.
yeah,
And my dad and I ski. My sister now skis, but she didn't at the time. My mom doesn't ski.
okay,
And yet it sort of worked. Like the bar, the fitness facility, a bit of walking, all green all over, very well taken care of.
it's amazing, huh?
Like it was just a good community vibe. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
big
what I
community
sensed.
vibe. Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool place to
Uh,
grow up.
Yeah, and I think those things mark you when you're growing up as a kid, Like, I mean, one thing is you go, there's a perfect lake, you ski, you're done, you ski, you leave. Another thing is where you go to a place to ski, particularly when you're young, where it's a bit more family oriented, a little bit more
Yeah,
just fun to be there, I guess,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, like everyone there was a family, so I think for
Yeah.
me as well, as a kid, I was used to being around adults,
Hmm.
and like that's passed on. I think as I've grown up, like I'm pretty comfortable talking to strangers and like adults all the time. And I noticed that a little bit with some other people my kind of age and even some a little older that they're not as comfortable actually like just talking smack around the lake.
Right, right.
A little bit more tense, and I think that part of that comes from Prince's being 12-year-old talking to a 52-year-old, and
Just getting
in
out of the
my
cab.
head we're on the same level.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think I remember interviewing, like, Will, Freddie, others, where they explained me there was this sort of like levels thing in the UK, where almost like no matter the age, you were sort of grouped into scores. Was that the case when you were growing up as well?
Yeah, I never paid too much attention to that, honestly. I had no idea.
Uh
Like I
huh.
had no idea about other people's scores for quite a long time.
Okay.
It was more just like whatever happened on the day between me and all my buddies. But
Okay.
yeah, it was a while until I really realized what competing against other people for like the whole entire year meant. It was just show up to the tournament, you ski against each other head to head.
Right. 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 So was that moment where you started to, understand that there's other people you're competing against, and levels and whatnot? Did that sort of coincide when you started skiing with John?
I got competitive when I started skiing with John.
Right.
He gave me a lot of base layers of how to train. He got my basics really good, and like it was at the point I was still like I was the worst tricker in England by far. Like I think I
Okay.
remember we were trying to break 1,000 points, and it was such a
I,
big thing. And all the other kids my age were tricking like 1,500, and there was a kid that could do a flip. We called him the Flip God. He could do one flip,
Man, it's
and
tough to
then
imagine, like, like hearing you say that now, but of course everyone has to start from somewhere.
yeah, I mean like you'll start somewhere. And at that point, I was very much the underdog. And then I had one winter where I went away. I went and did a flip camp with Mike Ferrero, learnt my first flip, and skied with Matt Reaney for like one set.
Yep.
And my dad had been skiing with him all week, and he was like, "Oh, this is great. Like, you need to start skiing with Matt." So he sent me out there for like 3-4 weeks. Well, he sent
Just
me out there for 1 week. And I called him up on the first night and said, "I hate it. I want to go home." I called him up on the second night and said, "Can I stay an extra week?" I think I stayed for, must have been about 3 or 4 weeks. I went there 6 times in one winter, and when I came
Wow.
back, I'd gone from like the worst, like I think it was under 12s at this point, the worst under 12s to like beating all the under 12s. I had 4 flips. I could do toes. My
Hmm.
slalom went through the roof. My jump went through the roof. Like all in pretty much one winter. I think everyone was a bit shocked by it.
Well, I mean, I think that's a lot to gain in a winter, right?
It was a lot.
Now, I I think this is a perfect time to ask the question that I've been wanting to ask. Um, okay, so your left foot forward slalom,
Yeah,
right foot forward tricks.
yeah.
How did that come about?
You know, I can't exactly remember it, like the original day it happened, but I'm really dyslexic. When I first started slalom skiing, I didn't know my lefts or rights, so every set I used to switch feet and
Okay.
just had no idea. And the coaches would be like, "Why have you got the wrong foot forward again? Like you've just done 4 passes on the wrong foot." And I was still running the slalom course. And then obviously I tricked a lot on the cable. Eventually we figured out I was left foot forward, but I started tricking on the cable, and I was right foot forward because it's easier hillside edge to get around the first corner.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So 'cause I tried toe side and I was like, I can't do it. So I went right foot and I could get round. Um, and then yeah, I think my dad bought me a right foot trick ski. Like it'll be fine.
Okay.
And it was.
It was, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, it worked. Kind of weird.
Yeah, it's really weird because there's a coach in Sicily that I've known since I've been a kid
I've heard
who,
about him.
yeah, he does that as a system. Like,
Yep.
so he says, okay, your left foot forward in slalom and your right foot forward in tricks, no matter who he has in front of you. And all
Yep.
these kids ski like that.
Yeah.
And so I haven't talked to him about you, but I'm certain that he gets so much confirmation about his theory,
Yeah.
just by going, okay, world overall champ is doing this. My theory's been right all along.
Yep. No, I
Uh,
mean, I think there's something behind it because I think especially I am definitely left foot forward. I skateboard
mhm.
left foot. I surf left foot. I kick a football with my right foot, but I put the weight on my left as I kick it. So
Right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Right-handed.
Both of them are equally bad when it comes to writing, but like I would
Okay.
say I'm probably right-hand dominant.
Okay.
That's what I drink all my pints with.
Perfect.
I'm kidding.
Well, until a certain amount.
Yeah, yeah, and then you got to go left.
Yeah, exactly.
But the theory is, when I trick, I spend 80% of my trick run backwards.
Hmm.
So my left foot would be in front. So that's how I justify it to myself, at least. Some people kind of buy into it and believe me a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's what I think.
A lot of flips from the back, a lot of flips landing in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Ski line back to back. Yeah.
I pretty much just turn forwards every now and then, but
Yeah.
I'm normally
Just
backwards.
incidentally, you have to go like a ski line 5 front, you have to land forward, but
Yeah.
that's quick. That's interesting. Yeah, the cable makes a lot of sense actually, because yeah, you go hillside around the first corner, and even
Yeah.
if you're sort of starting, you're already facing the cable as opposed to
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
toe
Yeah,
side.
because you got to do a dock start. I
Yeah,
literally,
yeah.
I learned to trick on the cable. Like, the first set I ever did was on a cable.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, so I had to start with a dock start. You just keep going until you figure it out.
Right.
And eventually I was like, I've had enough of this left foot business. I'm going right foot.
Well,
And
so it
that's what
worked out.
happens. That's what happens when you leave like an 11-year-old up to make his own choices.
Exactly. Yeah, grab the cab and go to the cable and wait for me. And
Yeah,
he
you'll be
comes back
fine.
and he's right foot forward in tricks. So let's maybe go into a little specifics. What are some of the things when you started working with John that he sort of addressed, maybe in slalom, in tricks? What were some of his fundamentals?
He was really, really big on the basics of you bend your knees, you stand still when you slalom. for trick, I just had to do 360s. We broke everything down to like the most basic, simple level.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're learning a trick, instead of just going out and trying a wake 5, you did a wake back to back with a front, like carry on to a 5, and it's just constant practice, sort of doing the trick without doing it.
Like
And that was all.
drills.
It was all the drills, but I think the thing he taught me most is like mindset. He used to be so hard on me, like, and he probably remembers some of this, but he used to just shout at me like to the edge where I'm crying in the water. Like I'm a little kid. He was a real savage, and at the time I'm thinking, this guy sucks. Like I hate this guy right now.
Right.
And I guess the point was he put like immense amounts of pressure on you as a kid, and like in practice. So I'm used to having crazy pressure on me. I get to a big tournament, it's like, oh, this is nothing. Like I've had someone literally shouting in my face telling me I suck.
Right.
Do not mess this up. If you mess this up, you're swimming in and it's like freezing cold. And like a little bit more French in there normally. I'd throw a few words at you. But it worked. I mean, like I'm glad he did it. Especially I'm still a bit of a cocky kid, but I was a real cocky kid, and he had to kind of knock me down a few levels and keep me humble.
Right. So mindset. No, that's an interesting one, because I mean, obviously John was an extremely accomplished water skier. He has done all of them. He has won most of them. So it makes you wonder, like, maybe he did it because he saw you as a little cocky kid, but also he must have seen some potential. Otherwise,
I think he saw the potential. He always said that I'll be a tricker. Even when I'm sitting there doing 360s on the water, I don't think he was expecting I'd be doing these kind of flips. I mean, when I do them now, he sends me a message like, that's mental. And like, tell me what you did, because I can't figure it out, kind of thing. But yeah, I think he saw the potential, but he made a big effort of off the water, your mindset. You don't throw a tantrum at the end of your set. You deal with it like a man, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What went wrong? Let's go back and address the issues. Yeah, like it was a lot of off-water training, I'd say, more than sort of on water. He did teach me a lot on the lake.
Yep.
Yeah, good mentor.
No. I mean, I would imagine. I mean, there's a lot of skiers who mention him as an influence. So clearly he's doing something right.
Yeah.
I was curious in the specifics with you. Now, were you already jumping at the time? Was jumping already in the picture?
Yeah, I'd started jumping. I think I started skiing with John when I was around 11. Mm-hmm. So I'd been at Prince's for maybe a year or two, and my dad said, okay, we need like a legit coach, someone that knows what they're doing, kind of thing. Because I was skiing at Prince's, but you have a different coach sort of every set. So we needed some more consistency. And Freddie Winter skied with John. So he sent me to go ski with Freddie and with John and get that consistency.
Yep.
I've forgotten what your original question was, actually.
No, like if you're already jumping at the time, like you were skiing with John.
So I was skiing at Prince's, I was jumping, but we didn't really know what we were doing. There was no jump coach. Okay. So he sent me to go ski with John because he knew what he was doing. I mean, he had coached Jason Seals, so at that
pretty
point
solid
he was jumping
start,
70 meters. So it's like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing.
Right.
And yeah, John didn't let me go over the ramp. He's like, nope, you're not allowed. He just made me ride my skis up and down, super slow. Like, couldn't even go fast. And then eventually, okay, we can do singles. And we could only do singles. And I was sick of it. I really wanted to do doubles in 3/4.
Right.
And the first time I ever did a 3/4 was in a tournament. Two of my older friends, who I was looking up to at the time, they were like, you should do doubles. I was like, nah. And then they were like, okay, well, at least do a 3/4. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. Like, if you say it, I'll do it. They tell me how to do it, give me a little land lesson. I'm like, perfect. I go out, I do my first ever 3/4 in a tournament. I'm so early, digging as hard as I can. I come off the ramp halfway, let go of the handle, didn't roll, took a massive stack.
No.
And I'm laying in the water, and I remember this. It really hurt my ankle, but I remember being like, John's going to kill me.
uh, so in those days, like, were you already thinking overall, or was it more like, okay, jumping and slaloming and tricking, sort of like in separate compartments? You see what I mean?
Yeah, it was definitely separate. I mean, every week it would change. Like I would just only slalom for like 2 weeks, and then I would only
Yeah.
jump for 2 weeks, and I would only trick for 2 weeks. Unless John was there, John would be like, you have to do it every single day. But on a weekend, I'd go ski at a different lake called Gosfield. It's you know Vince Turp,
Yeah, of
of
course.
course. It's his lake. I'd go ski there, and there was a little bit more freedom of like, you want to jump, let's go jump. You want to go trick, let's go trick. Like, let's follow your passion more.
Yeah.
Which that mixture was really good for me. Because it kept me interested, kind of thing. And then I'd go ski with John, and he had to kind of be like, okay, you've jumped 7 times this week. You need to slalom and trick.
Right, right. Yeah, it's cool. You had that balance of like structure, but then you knew that in the weekend, if that week was like a trick week, you could go to Vince's and he will just let
Yeah,
you trick.
yeah,
That's cool.
it was good.
Yeah. Now, what would you say was the first time that you felt you were getting good?
I
Around those
think
years.
I think it would have been my second under 14 Europeans. Because
Okay.
I didn't really know what a ranking list was. I mean, like, I didn't have an iPhone or anything like that or a laptop, so I didn't go on and look at it like you can now. It wasn't as easy.
Hmm.
And yeah, my first Europeans, well, I guess earlier in the year, I've been chasing the slalom record. And at that point, like, I know I'm like an okay skier, but I think I'm good for England. And I
Yep.
went to my first Europeans, no idea what to expect. And I ended up breaking the British record. I think I came third in jump. I won overall, and I won slalom.
So that was
And I
your
made
second.
that was
That
my
was your
second ever
sec.
Europeans.
Okay. Where was that?
That was in France. I can't remember what lake it was,
Hmm.
but I remember that was in France. And like I made a lot of friends that trip. Like I'm still kind of best friends with a lot of those people. I think back to it now, like it's crazy to think that pretty much all my best friends I met most of them on that second ever Europeans trip. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
like the first time I realized, oh, I'm actually like not too bad at this. I could be
Yeah.
pretty good if I tried.
Yeah.
And then yeah, that was big motivation for me.
Any sort of cool little story about the European, something that happened that you still remember well?
Um, I think it was the first time I got introduced to singing an anthem.
Aha.
I can't remember who it was, but I know it's the Italian anthem, and they were singing it as loud as they could, and I was like, "That's awesome!"
Yeah, well, we tend to
And
do
then
that.
I was standing on my podium, and I didn't know my anthem, and I'm like, "Man, I wish I knew it." And then that was it.
Well,
After that, I knew my anthem.
yeah, yeah. Well, I remember last month I heard you sing it pretty well and loud.
I sing it pretty hard and pretty loud. I mean, it's my favorite song.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get to that one. Now, um, so you said, okay, you finished the trip. You're like, okay, I might be pretty good at this if I put my heart and soul into it.
Yeah,
Um, well, I'm assuming that was your last under 14 European. I
yeah,
mean, sorry, yeah, yeah. So you were 14. And then comes the first year of juniors, which the first year of juniors can be a tricky moment, right? Like you're skiing against skiers that are 2 years older than you.
yeah,
Like it's like that year where you're just rowing, learning 36 miles per hour.
yeah.
How was that?
Um, I was really lucky because I had Rob Hazelwood growing up,
Yeah.
and we were the same age, so I had someone to compare myself against directly because we're like neck and neck. We're in different ends of the country, but we go to the same tournaments. We ski against each other once a month at least.
Hmm.
So over the winter, I'm at Matt's. He's going out to Tom and June's in America. Like we're both going to America a bit at this point, get the winter training in. And you see videos of each other. Like I saw a video of him doing trick, and I was like, man, I need to get better at trick.
Right.
But I think jump was actually my best event that year. I came back. I think first year I jumped like 50 meters, which compared to some of the kids now isn't massive. But the year before I'd only jumped 40, so I'd gained
No.
like 10 meters. We'd gone up speed and we'd gone up ramp height as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember that being like quite a big thing for me that I jumped 50 meters and that was my aim. Slalom was good. That went up maybe 2 boys, but we also went up a speed.
Right.
And I think trick that was the year I learned 2 mobs. So I
Ooh.
gained, and then a few other toe tricks. So I gained about 2,000 points. It was actually like a really big year for me. But
Yeah.
after winning Europeans and knowing that next year it's going to be harder and seeing all of the under 17 scores, and like in slalom, I think the win for that under 17 Europeans, I don't think anyone ran 11.
Oh
So in
wow.
my mind, I'm thinking I can win Europeans next year. Like I just got to
Yeah.
train really, really hard. And same for jump, same for trick. I'm like, if I train really hard and I do what I did last year and gain a few passes and 1,000 points, then next year I'll be good. And I think it kind of worked. I can't remember where I came, but I definitely made some podiums at the Europeans. I remember at Worlds, came third in jump and third in overall. And that
Wow.
was against
As a first year junior.
yeah, that was against Taylor Garcia. That was Taylor Garcia's last year.
Oh wow.
So it's
No,
him
that's
and Nick Lang.
yeah, that's very impressive because I think I don't want to say that's the year where you gain or lose a skier. I don't. That's too harsh
Yeah,
of a judgment, but it is a tough year, because even physically, mentally, just those 2 years make such a big difference.
yeah,
Um, so I think it's always I'm thinking as a coach now, like how do you keep those skiers motivated, and they're improving, but they're still probably so far from those 17-year
yeah.
olds. And I love how you said, I just kept saying, if I train hard, I can do it. If I train
Yeah.
hard, I can do it. Is that was that a constant throughout the years?
I mean, in the winters when it's really cold, I wanted to quit.
Of course.
But like honestly, I think a big drive for me was all my friends in the sport,
Hmm.
and I wanted to make the teams. I wanted to go ski with them. I wanted to ski against them, and that was pretty huge for me. But yeah, like it's always just kind of been train really, really hard, put all your effort in when you're out there. Like
Yeah.
when you get in, you can chill in the sauna and relax, but when you're out in the water, and that was a lot of John. When you're out there, you don't give 10%, you give 100%. Like you better concentrate, otherwise he's going to turn into the devil and shower you.
Right.
So
Right.
you work hard, and he
Yeah. When
knows
you're
when
in
you're
the
not working
water.
hard.
Yeah.
He knows the difference between working hard and having a bad day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah, that's
it was
that's
pretty
uh
good.
that's a tough thing, especially for someone who goes into, as you said, devil mode when
Yeah,
when someone is not trying. Because noticing to the untrained eye, especially in a sport like ours where you just make a mistake and you're done, it's subtle sometimes, the not trying versus trying but it's not working.
yeah,
But I'm sure that, like, as experienced as he is, he was obviously super keen to notice the difference and letting you know.
Well, I think his big thing is I don't care if you fail. I don't care if you mess it up, if you fall. You can do that as many times as you like. I care if you make the same mistake twice in a row. If you keep doing the same thing, you're not trying. And like if you're just not putting in the effort, like what are you doing out here kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was real big on like you do the work. Do
Hmm.
whatever you want when we're done, but when you're here, you put in the work.
Right.
It
Right.
was big. Yeah.
Now, since we're talking about 14, 15, those years, how were you balancing? Were you playing any other sports?
I mean, I think around that age is when I stopped. I used to like do downhill snow skiing. It was more on a
Oh,
dry
okay.
slope. We did a few little trips, but yeah, I used to do some skiing. I used to play a little bit of rugby. I did some boxing, a little bit of karate. I did a little bit of everything, but nothing was really what I wanted to do. I
Hmm.
did used to skateboard a lot. I'm good at riding
Oh,
a
okay.
skateboard. I just can't do any tricks. But
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, I was always having to do something, but there was never any other sports that like really grabbed at my heart like skiing did.
Yeah.
Kind of took
Yeah.
over for me.
Was it something that like your dad, like your parents were encouraging, like do these other things, or you were just like, okay, let's try that?
Oh, I always had to do something. I mean, that was pretty big with my dad. I think my mum was always just like, let him chill, let him relax. And my dad was like, no, he needs to be in a fighter jet. He needs to be going full speed.
Nice, nice.
And yeah, like I'm really glad dad was like that with me though. And then I like the side of my mum as well. She's a bit more chill. She likes to relax. I think my tournament mindset is more like my mum, of like, just relax, stay calm. Although my dad's pretty calm too, but I've got a good mixture of them too.
No, no, of course, that's
Yeah,
nice when you can take both sides, and mix them up in the best.
yeah,
Um, yeah, the reason why I asked about other sports was more about like the balancing act that sometimes you feel like you have to do at that age, which obviously the other big one is school.
yeah.
So what was your, let's say, every average day of skiing during those days?
In the winter, I would only ski like on a weekend and a Wednesday,
Hmm.
and like because it gets dark in England in the winter at about 4, so I'd leave school at like 1, get to the lake for around 2, and then just smash the sets out for 2 hours, and then it would be dark, and I'd get a train home. And then weekends would ski, but in the summers I went to the lake like every day, and then I'd normally go after school. School would finish at 4 or 4:30.
Yep.
I'd get a taxi to the lake. It was like an hour's taxi. Ski 4, 5 sets. Normally, like one slalom, a double trick, a jump set, and then if I had some energy, I'd go for like a slippery slalom set, like those fun trick sets you see I do on Instagram. Like I actually
Yeah,
used
yeah,
to
yeah.
do that like daily,
Ah,
and then I'd get a
okay.
train home. I remember I hate the train.
No way.
It was always
Didn't
so
like it.
cold. I hate the train. I still hate the train.
Oh, no way. See, that's funny. Like, I moved back to Europe after 13 years in the US last year, and that's
Yeah,
actually one of the things I was missing the most. Yet, I don't normally take the train after a cold set in November, but
yeah,
just more leisure, like, oh, I'm gonna go there with the train. But yeah, I can see
yeah.
how after 5 sets in 3 hours in November, probably it's not the best experience.
It sucked. It was horrible. I mean, not as bad in the summer,
Right.
but I'd either have my bike if I could fit my bike in the taxi, or I'd have to walk.
Hmm.
And the walk was like a 30-minute walk. It'd be so cold. And I'd have to wait for my train. If I missed my train, the next one wasn't for like another 45 minutes.
Yeah,
It
not
sucked.
nice.
It was horrible. But it was kind of just what you did.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
normal.
yeah,
I hated it, but you had to do it.
yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to train hard, that was part of the deal.
Yeah.
And yet, I like how you like slippery slalom type of sets were like an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, like even like on my jump skis, I would go run the slalom course, and like slalom, like every day I'd have at least 10 minutes of a set, or at least a whole set, like 15 minutes, where I'd just go out and kind of muck about,
Hmm.
go the wrong foot forward slalom, just silly things. I could always just go out for the last set and have fun, or at least the cable for like an hour.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
every day. I just didn't want to get on the train.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. But I find it interesting how, you were skiing with John, and John was like, when you're in the water, you do the work, and yet he
Yeah.
would allow you to just take that one final set after you did the work where you just mess about.
Yeah, it could never be the first set. I always had
No,
to go
well,
out and do the sets. If I had a bad set, he would make me go and do another one.
okay.
I
Okay.
would I would always have 4 sets booked, and then if I wanted, I could go for the 5th set. He would have time for that normally. But
Hmm.
if I did like a bad set, or I didn't put the work in, if I just had a bad slalom set, it was fine. But if I didn't put the work in, we went out there and we did it again.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it again, so I made sure I put in the work, and then at the end, and that's the reward system.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
and even
Very
now
smart.
it's the same. Like I go out, I do the work, and then at the end of it, I go work on that new trick I want to do.
Hmm. Hmm. See, that's really cool because I mean, super smart on John's part, but I think it's also, a lot of coaches will tell you or will tell the parents, let the kids go play on the trick ski, like for fun and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But they never sort of like have it quite systematically. You know, it's just like, okay, the boat is at the dock, there's nothing to do, the
Yeah.
kids are, you know, it's a day off or whatever. Whereas you had it fairly frequently, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like at least 3 or 4 days a week.
Well, yeah, it's frequent. Um, do you think, what did you think it gave you? That
Creativity.
creativity.
It gave me the creativity. Like that all the outside the box. I mean, I used to just jump the wakes. Like I can't imagine being the boat driver. 15 minutes and I'll just jump the wakes, jump the wakes, jump the wakes.
Right.
And then they'll be like, why don't you try doing something else? I'll be like, all right, I'll do a grab. Oh, maybe I could do a 180. Maybe I could do a grab with a 180. All right, let's try do that in the slalom course now. Let's try do a 360 before every buoy. Let's try do a flip. Now a flip with a 360. And it just slowly it evolved more and more and more into just... And even now, like I go out for a set, I'm constantly learning like silly little tricks. Like monthly I learn something new. And it's from snowboarding or wakeboarding or skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like I watch someone else do it and go, that looks cool, I'm going to try that.
So it almost, yeah, it's cool because it's almost like a trace from your wakeboarding early days. Because I think in wakeboarding, that's like the MO. Like you do that, and then sometimes something comes about and you try it if you feel like it. If not, you just continue. Whereas you had that little trace, and you still do. I mean, anyone that sees your social media, they see it all the time, that you're just out there having fun, just doing nothing that is on the trick books, you know, like yeah.
I guess that was kind of the point of it for me, really. Like that's what I loved most about tricking, because I hated tricking.
Right.
The thing that I loved about tricking was all the silly fun stuff. I don't know if you know who George Mailing is.
Of course. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, very well.
I don't know if you've ever seen his video from Bennett's. It was one of the winters. He goes out, and it's like a spitting image pretty much of the stuff I do, but just, you know, the quality's a little low.
I do remember that video. Yeah.
Great song in it. Left, right.
Well, I mean, I remember seeing George at Bennett's doing that, because that's what I got to know George. And he had that playfulness in his skiing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that was the first person to introduce me to that on a trick ski. That was in Extreme Gene. I skied with him. He went for a trick set, did the slalom course, made a bunch of spray, did flips. It's like, this is awesome.
Right.
And then that's kind of where it stemmed from originally, and then it kind of just molded into its own thing.
Now, I think that's beautiful to get passionate about the sport of trick skiing. But then trick skiing also has that other aspect of repetition, consistency, runs, sequences. Now, was it hard for you to shift modes, or those little sets were giving you the opportunity to screw around, and then when you were tricking, you were doing sequences? Like, how was that?
I mean, I think John, because I did a lot of my younger days tricking with John, he understood that, like, a kid needs to see the progress. And if he can't see progress, he'll get bored. So it was always, he did a really good job of finding different fun ways to make trick interesting. So how could I go out there and do 1,000 360s and not get bored? Well, let's make it a challenge. How many 360s can you do before the end of the lake? Let's do one really slow and then go faster and faster and faster until you're going so fast that you can like barely keep the handle in your hands. So there was like, he was really good with keeping the drills fun. There was always a new fun drill. There was definitely days that, you know, I was fed up with it. I did not want to trick. So I put a slalom ski on instead. That was the best part of 3 event. I could always do the other event.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's fast forward. We said about first year junior. How were the other 2 years of juniors? Like pretty bang on podiums, wins and stuff, or any challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it became a big competition of me and Rob on year 2. Because I'd kind of taken off a little bit on that first year. I got a big head start. And I probably coasted a little bit too much actually coming into that second year of under 17s because I was ahead.
Right.
And he taught me a big lesson that year. You don't, when you're ahead, you don't cool off. You know, keep the foot on the gas. Because he caught up and he overtook me, and he was beating me in slalom. He was on my tail in jump. He was kind of right behind me in trick, not far, but you know, if I missed a trick and he didn't, he beat me in trick.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big learning curve for me. I had to work really hard that year. I did end up skiing pretty well. I think that was a year he got injured actually, and he dislocated his hip.
Oh wow.
Otherwise, I'm sure he would have just carried on getting better and better and better and overtaking me that year. But that was like a big kick up my arse. I think I won my first under 17 Europeans that year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been an overall, or no, it was in slalom.
Okay.
And it was because Jakob
Yep.
from Sweden, he messed up in slalom basically. But I got like 3 at 11. He messed up and I think missed his first pass, but he was like running 11 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually pretty lucky on my behalf, but I was like, I don't want to rely on luck anymore. And that third year, coming into that winter, I put a lot of work in. That was the year I really started grinding. I think I tricked 10,000 for the first time. I jumped 56, and I got 1 at 10.7.
As a junior.
And that was my final year. I was like, I'm going for it. And yeah, real big push.
Wow.
Rob did beat me in slalom that year. I think he got 3, or no, he got 4
10.7.
At 10.7. Actually, now I think about it, I think I got 3 at the start of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Those are massive scores.
It was pretty huge. Like, and bearing in mind, there's 2 of us from the same country,
same
like,
age.
It was like I would never be where I am without Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, you said it from the beginning.
He's my greatest competitor of all time. Like, he pushed me hard and he made me work hard for it. And even now, like, we still compete pretty hard.
Yeah. No, I bet.
Yeah.
And I really love how, you know, like you won Europeans in slalom. Yeah, Jacob fell, but you know, you could have thought that's part of the sport. You know, tough luck. I'm the champ. And yet that made you, I'm not going to rely on luck anymore the next time I compete.
Yeah.
So it made you work even harder. Well, that's fantastic.
And I didn't win every event either. I only won slalom. I think I came third in overall maybe, or second in overall.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty mad about that because I came third at Worlds and I got beaten by 2 Americans. So I was like, I should win Europeans.
Right.
And I didn't. And I was really mad about that. And I didn't win jump either. And I wanted to win jump. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was a real big deal for me. It bugged me. I didn't want to lose again.